After the tragic situation that happened at Lakewood Church, reports started to surface on the internet from reputable outlets like Libs of TikTok. No, I'm joking. Reputable outlets like Fox News, which maybe you don't like Fox News. I didn't really like Fox News, saying that the person who was at fault for the situation identified as a transformer, and we didn't know if they were biologically born male that transitioned. That is kind of what Fox alluded to. Well, it comes out that the person did not identify as a part of this community, but I have some other questions. Okay, so let's clear up the record. If we got this wrong by reacting to Fox News, then, you know, we got to clean it up, okay? So it says the Texas megachurch shooter has not identified as trans despite claims online. This is Associated Press. I think they're reasonable. Claim the shooter who carried out the situation over at Lakewood megachurch on Sunday has been identified as a transformer. That's the claim. AP Falls Houston police said on Monday. So this is from the police, that in its investigation has thus far determined that the shooter identified as a female despite using multiple aliases, including the name Jeffrey or Jeffery. Multiple court records identify Marino as a female, most recently in 2022. Facts. Amid the aftermath of the shooting, which is led by televangelist Joel Osteen, social media users spread false claim about Marino's gender identity. If this person didn't identify as that, and that was misreported, and then we misreported the misreporting, that's foul. That's messed up. So apologies there. However,
there we go.
However, I do find it telling that she identified as Jeffrey, cisgendered mother who, in all of her charges, which, by the way, I don't know how she was allowed to legally buy a firearm. Okay. Multiple charges going back to 2008. Assaulting a police officer. Okay. I'm a 2A guy. Okay. But I have no idea how you get access to legal after assaulting a police officer. Neither here nor there. So,
CIA.
So, false flag.
Low key, dude.
So, I am still, so according to the court documents, up until 2022, she identified as a female. They're saying there's no evidence, but that still begs the question, why in the world would she identify as Jeffrey? Have you ever met a Jeffrey woman?
Not even close.
I've never met a Jeffrey.
Met a Jenny.
I met a Jenny.
Jennifer.
I met a Jessie. Jalissa. Never met a Jeffrey. So I'm not sure what's happening in that. Now, here's a possibility. Now, maybe there's no evidence for this, but here's a possibility. The possibility is perhaps they did not identify as a part of the Transformers community until post-2022. That's a possibility. But that leads us to the broader conversation, which is people want to dunk on Libs of TikTok, which I get. Libs of TikTok is just dunking on Libs, and people want to be mad at Libs of TikTok and Fox News, all these things. And I think everybody was operating out of the same situation. So the question then becomes, well, have there been Transformers who have been going out and committing these crimes, these mass? Okay, so we got an article on this. Okay, now we have to be very intentional because the question is, Valuetainment came out video today saying there's an epidemic of this, right? There's an epidemic of people in this community doing this. I don't know if I would use the same language, but it is an interesting conversation, okay? So let's scroll down. And so this is over on Newsweek. A tweet listing 4 of these situations in the past 5 years that were perpetuated by Transformer people have gone viral, attracting 5.4 million views as of 8 a.m. Benny Johnson, political columnist and Turning Point USA official, wrote in his viral tweet, one thing is very clear, the modern Transformer movement is radicalizing activists in itself. Now, here's the question. If we would agree that white men in and of themselves aren't more savage and violent, yet the majority of these mass situations happen by white men because they get radicalized on the internet and mental illness, why would we then assume the Transformer community can be susceptible to the same radicalization on the internet?
That's a good point.
Right? Musk, who expressed varying views on this issue and is reported to have a Transformer child himself, replied to the tweet with an exclamation point. So, now here are the facts. Colorado Springs identified as
non-binary.
Denver identified as Aberdeen identified as
Transformer. Nashville
identified as
Transformer.
One thing is very clear, the modern Transformer movement is radicalizing activists into terrorists. The language is there. I would say activists who have mental health issues into people who carry out these attacks. Now, then the article goes on to state, well, according to the math and the data, there's only 0.01% of all this. Now, here's the disingenuous part. And I had a whole conversation about this with a friend of mine, a liberal friend of mine. And he said, 1% of all these situations are carried out by these individuals. I said, well, how are we defining a quote unquote mass? Individual mental health concerns pointed out that there had already been 100 of these shootings in 2023. Now, have there been 100 I'm going to walk into a church and open fire indiscriminately situations? Have there been 100 I'm going to walk into a school and open fire indiscriminately situations? Have there been 100 situations where people walk into public places and open fire?
On randos.
On randos.
No.
Because I think when we say, this is tragic, I can't believe someone I think we're saying one thing when we say mass. And I think the way they categorize these is very different. Because I don't know if it defines here, but a mass shooting, according to this, or just in general, is when, so again, their numbers is 4 shooters out of 300 mass shootings are trans. So 4 out of 300. Well, by golly, that doesn't sound like there's anything going on. We're not going to talk about the last 4 out of 8 were that, right?
Yep.
And so how a mass shooting is identified, this is where you have to get into the weeds. Well, a mass shooting is identified by 3 or more people who are injured. So you know what that means? That means that when there's a situation that happens in an area where there's mutual combatants, meaning that there's one set of gentlemen opening fire on another set of gentlemen, and there's 3 or more people involved, you know what that's called? That's called a mass shooting. So when we say there's 100 mass shootings.
Yep. Any incident at which at least 4 people are with a gun. So that's interesting. So then that also adds on to the layer that like the media is defining something as mass shooting.
That we don't, most people, so when you hear there's been 100 in the last year, in 2023, we think there's been 100 Lakewood incidents. We think there's been 100 Nashville incidents. And no. There hasn't. There's been 100 situations where 4 or more people have been tragically killed. All of this is tragic. All of this is awful. But most people know there's a difference between people who are in cartels, in gangs, moving dope, moving human trafficking, and happening amongst those people, and someone walking into a church and opening fire.
Oh yeah,
right. So instantly they're finessing the math, right? The math is different. Now I don't know how you even categorize that, right? Going a public, maybe we have to change the definitions. So then all this stuff gets manipulated, and they're going to say, well, it's 0.01%. Well, it's like of 4 or more, sure, but that's not what we think of when we think about these things.
Yeah.
Right.
What is the demographic of the people that clock randos with a rifle?
Yes.
Like if that is how we're defining mass,
is a different definition.
How about this? Let's define it by the mass you actually write articles about.
If we look at those, 4, potentially 5, we're going to give Jeffrey a pass here. 4 to 5 out of the last 10 have been from this community.
Yeah.
That's a pretty alarming rate, if you ask me.
It's a little high.
So these numbers get manipulated. Same thing with there's been a gajillion, 50,000 deaths. You're leaving out that 54% of those were self-inflicted. Oh, that changes the math, doesn't it?
And you also forget that some of those are justified.
And what do you mean? Oh, yeah, in terms of protecting yourself.
Yeah. But that's a death.
That is.
There's
right.
I saw a statistic by BLM. I knew somebody that bought a BLM shirt. In hindsight, they're like, wow, it's really cringe. I bought a BLM shirt because of BLM. And the shirt said 99% of police murders go unprosecuted or something like that. I was like, well, that's including a large majority of them where they're literally facing someone with a gun at their face or
because
a knife.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it's like
they go unprosecuted for a reason.
Yeah.
So having said all that, I think it's important to know that if this person didn't identify as that, fair enough. Okay. Yeah. I have questions why a woman would identify as Jeffrey, but maybe we were wrong. Fair enough. Don't get your news from Lids of TikTok. Maybe Fox News needs to put a retraction out. Fair enough. This is our version of retraction. I still have more questions than answers. And I do think that if we're talking about an ideology that repeatedly tells people that silence is violence, words are violence, and if someone commits violence against you, you have the right to respond back with physical violence. If someone's perpetuating that ideology, I understand where you take that ideology and you package it with someone who's mentally ill, and then boom, you get radicalization. In the same way we've seen historic radicalization of white men in this country to white supremacy, which is terrible and evil and awful, right? Could there be a shift in just as of a demonic and sinister ideology with regards to this? Hey, silence is violence. If someone says something to hurt your feelings, you can respond with violence. If someone holds a position you don't like, you could respond with violence. And if someone doesn't affirm you, they hate you. If someone doesn't affirm your lifestyle and who you identify as, they hate you. Well, then the logic, if that's what you believe, then not only do they hate you, but they want to take your rights away and they want to commit a genocide on you. This is the language that's used by the people, by the transformers in this community and by some LGBTQ people. So if that's the paradigm they're coming from, well, then of course it would make sense. Of course it would make sense for someone to react this way. I wanted to address this because I think it's an important conversation. I don't know if there's going to be an uptick. I would say 4 is just alarming because it seems like they've happened more frequently, specifically with this conversation, and this is where then real phobia starts. Right? This is where then real phobia starts. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. 1, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And 2, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.